Just a few weeks later, a huge fleet of warships is sent to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean by the atomic bomb. Today, they still lie where they sank, Bikini Lagoon. Here, in July 1946, the public would be invited to witness an atomic explosion for the first time. The U.S. military would discover how vulnerable it was to its own bomb. And the future of Los Alamos Laboratory would be guaranteed. All the result of an event appropriately named Crossroads. Crossroads is the brainchild of this man.
Louis Strauss, or Strauss as he liked to be called.
A curious figure of a man who had been a shoe salesman and had made himself very rich. And then he was an admiral in the Navy, but he never sailed a ship.
Extremely politically ambitious.
Strauss is worried about the Navy. How will the new atomic bomb affect its future?
Historically, what did we have in the country? We had an Army and a Navy.
What does the bomb mean for each of them? It's the thing to have. It's a winning weapon. Everybody wants it.
But only the Air Force has it. And in 1946, the Air Force is still part of the Army.
People have been arguing that the Navy's obsolete. Now, Air Forces will control how wars are fought and won.
The traditional line in the Navy during the Cold War was, remember, the Soviet Union is our adversary, the Army is our enemy.
Louis Strauss thinks he has the perfect answer to the Navy's problem. A bomb test to prove Navy ships can survive atomic weapons. Operation Crossroads.
Sort of a contest between the Navy and the Air Force, in which Air Force bombers will try and sink Navy ships.
The first casualty in the contest is Leslie Groves. The Navy, not Groves, will be in charge of Crossroads. They'll do the test in the middle of the Pacific Ocean at the tiny island of Bikini. The Navy evicts the residents and assembles a target fleet. Over 90 captured German, Japanese, and surplus U.S. warships will be bombed. There'll be 3 explosions, Able, Baker, and Charlie. 1 in the air, 2 underwater. Crossroads is a huge operation. $100 million, 42,000 men, 240 ships, not counting the targets, instruments, cameras, and more cameras. Film, miles and miles of it. Animals, so doctors can study what the bomb does to living creatures. And reporters from all over the world.
It was a show. It was a spectacle.
At last, all was ready for Able Day, tentatively set
July
by
1st, 1946, the show begins.
Dave's dream is roaring down the runway, engines singing.
For the first test, Able, they'll drop the bomb from a plane.
Bomb bay doors are open.
The plane approaches. The bomb is dropped.
Unfolded are a myriad of majestic, startling, and awesome effects, a panoply that only the cameras can record in faithful detail.
The bomb, the same Fat Man model dropped on Nagasaki, has a force of 20,000 tons of TNT. B-17 drones flown by remote control are sent into the mushroom cloud to take measurements. It's the first nuclear explosion to be witnessed by the public. But the public is 18 miles away, and after all the buildup,
I'm a bit disappointed as to the size of the flash.
You didn't see ships flying through the air, and the first reaction was, the atomic bomb, not such a big deal.
3 weeks later, a second test, Baker. This time, the bomb will be underwater. The scientists think it's a terrible idea. They warn that exploding an atomic bomb underwater will create a witch's brew of radioactivity, releasing enough plutonium to poison the entire armed forces of the U.S.
They knew what was going to happen when you set off an underwater explosion. It was going to make a lot of contamination. But I guess they lost out to Admiral Blandy.
Navy Admiral William Blandy is the man in charge of Crossroads. And from the start, he's got a PR problem.
I am not an atomic playboy, as one of my critics labeled me, exploding these bombs to satisfy my personal whim.
Many considered it a boondoggle.
The bomb will not start a chain reaction in the water, converting it all to gas and letting all the ships on all the oceans drop down to the bottom.
There was a tremendous amount of pressure, I think, on the Navy to try and convince the public that this was worthwhile.
Bikini Atoll and Baker Day, the underwater explosion of the 5th atomic bomb. The bomb and instruments are set into action. Aboard the Los Alamos firing ship, nerves are stretched to the breaking point. 5 radio control circuits will set off the blast in this prelude to push-button warfare.
3, 2, 1, fire!
An underwater shock wave is clearly visible. In the first 1 second, 2 million tons of seawater are lifted into the air. As the water rises, it creates a column nearly a half-mile wide. Now it starts to fall back. The water falling out of the sky creates a base surge, like the mist at the bottom of a waterfall. The surge, nearly 1,000 feet tall, completely envelops the target ships. No one has ever seen anything like it. The sheer power and magnitude of the atomic bomb. But so far, despite 2 of these bombs, the results look pretty good for the Navy. 75 ships survived, less than 20 sunk.
The Navy felt that they came out of it with flying colors, and Blandy said, yes, the Navy can withstand the atomic bomb.
The Navy plans to put sailors on these ships and sail them triumphantly back to the U.S. But there's a problem.
At first, there seemed to be little damage, but succeeding days told a different story.
The 1,000-foot-high wave of water that drenched the ships was highly radioactive. The ships are now contaminated.
Geiger counters rattle wildly. The area is loaded with death-dealing gamma, neutron, and other lethal rays. And there is no complete protection against this terrifying invisible killer.
At first, the Navy simply doesn't believe it.
You can't smell radiation, you can't feel it, and these Navy guys were just gonna get back on their ships and survive the bomb.
Now they have no idea what to do.
The ignorance was rampant. There was no real plan for decontamination.
They try hosing down the ships with seawater. Trouble is, the seawater itself is now highly radioactive. And when the sailors go back to their own ships to change clothes, they contaminate those ships too. The man in charge of radiation safety, Army Dr. Stafford Warren, tries to cancel the operation.
Stafford Warren doesn't want the sailors back on the ships, but it's pretty hard to go up against the entire U.S. Navy.
In desperation, Stafford Warren gets a fish from the lagoon and places it against a piece of film. The fish is so radioactive, it exposes the film all by itself.
The glow was produced by the exposure of the film to radiation.
Finally, Admiral Blandy and the Navy are convinced. Crossroads is halted. It's been called the world's first nuclear disaster. Only 9 ships are ever successfully decontaminated. Most of the rest are towed away and deliberately sunk.